There we go. Okay, so Blackboard has so much more to offer than just uploading your study guides and study materials and having your students write tests and upload assignments. So let's have a look at some of these tools. Now, when we scroll down, we see on the left, our menu on the left, we have this course management section. Now, everything below this line here is not available for a student profile. So anyone who's uploaded to your group as a student will not see this. So remember, when using a tool, that your students might not be able to access it unless you add it to your menu. So I'm going to show you what I mean now. If I, for instance, swap to student preview mode and look at my page as a student, I can see that below that tab portfolio of evidence, there's nothing further there. So if I do not create a discussions or an announcement or a grades tool for them on my menu, they will not be able to access it. So say, for instance, I go up, just want to use an example that isn't on the menu. Let's say blogs, for instance, is not here on the menu. I go to course tools, I expand it, and I go to blogs. And I create one of these blogs for my students. You can see there already are a couple of blogs. They would not be able to access it. So I can create the blog and tell them what to do, but they won't be able to get into it without linking it to the menu or adding it to a unit. Now, let me show you how to do that. I'm just going to go up to my add menu item button, which is the little plus sign there. And I'm going to add the tool link. Now I'm going to select from the drop down, and here's all of my tools that I can add to the menu. So you can go through them. Some of these are not even available on, like the grades one, for instance, you won't find in the menu. You can add it here. I think it's my marks. So for your students to quickly access their marks, you can add that as well. But the rest you should all find at the bottom there under course tools. So I'm going to add the blogs course tools. I'm going to call it blogs as well, but you can call it anything. So you don't always have to call it the same name as eThuto calls it. So if this is maybe a portfolio or their journals or whatever the case, you can call it whatever you want to and submit. And see, now the blogs is available on the menu. So if I open up as a student again, my student will be able to access the blogs now from this link here that I've made available for them. So that is something to always remember. You don't always have to add a tool as a link in the menu separately. You can add it within a learning unit. So for instance, say you're building content here in your learning unit and you want them to participate in a blog post. You can come here to tools. So normally we would build content or we would set up assignments or assessments. You can also come and have any of the tools available, but within that content area instead of a link separately. So I'm going to say blogs. I'm going to link to one that I've already created. Let's say Kitchen 101. Go next. And now we can set up our blog and instructions. So I'm going to call this, you can keep calling it Kitchen 101. And obviously, you'll be a lot more in depth with their instructions. Hopefully also spell it correctly. And then we're going to keep it available. You can track the number of views of how many students have accessed it. And then you submit. Now, students, let me just show you what that would look like from student preview mode. Now, students can come and access the blog within the available units that you've had. So those are two ways of doing that. You can either have it inside a content area that you've already created or create a new content area. So content area is this one here at the top, and that's the blank space where we have access to build content, assessments, and tools. Or you can add a tool link, which is where we have different kinds of tool links to the menu. So each of these will have a different function and take you to a different place. Okay, Now let's go through some of these tools and see which ones you can benefit from and how they work. Now, because this is not a training on each of them separately, I'm going to go through them briefly, but we have videos on each of them available, especially under the facilitation playlist. So for instance, Collaborate Ultra, discussions, groups, anything like that. So you can go and have a look at them or play around with them. So I'm just going to go briefly through some of the things. A lot of the options also double up. For instance, options in discussion boards, blogs and journals are the same and they do the same functions. So we can quickly go through them. Now let's go through, I'm going to skip a lot as well, because a lot of these we don't use on a regular basis, but you're welcome to go and explore with them. Let's have a look at announcements first. So announcements are one-way correspondence, one-way meaning that it's from lecturer or instructor on the page to student. There's no back. So the student can't reply back to you on an announcement. So it's just a one-way kind of like letting them know something, maybe class has changed, times have changed, or when tests are, or just reminders or anything like that. Now, how the announcements work is newest ones are always at the top. So you can see here that July is after June, but we can change them. The dragging and dropping doesn't always work so well. Okay, there we go. By dragging and dropping, this works for everything on Blackboard. Whenever you hover your cursor over something and you see the 4 arrows, that means that you can drag and drop it to a different location. Okay, so it works the same for your menu items here and any content items anywhere in Blackboard. Okay, you can also do it with the keyboard accessible, but that is a longer route. Now you'll see at the top, and you'll always have this, is new announcements appear below this line. This means that we can freeze an announcement. And by that, I mean we can have an announcement that is always at the top by dragging it over that line. That means that if you have a message to students that you want to display at the top all year round, you just drag it over and make sure that this line is in between your new announcements and your permanent announcements. I'm just going to quickly show you what's going to happen now. I'm going to create an announcement. And as always, anything with an orange asterisk in eThuto means that it's a required field and it will not submit unless you complete that field. So I'm going to call this permanent announcement, and we're going to freeze this one so you can see what it looks like. There we go. So you just type in. Now, if you're not familiar with the content editor box, I do recommend that you go and watch the video content editor box, because there's a lot of things that is quite useful here, but it works very similar to most of your word processing software. So if you use Word, Microsoft's Word, or Google's Docs, or whatever you use, it's very similar. You'll find all of your tools at the top here that you will be familiar with. Some of these at the bottom though are different, and they will be the add content button. So we can add any kind of content, be it files, images, videos, or anything from our computer, from content collection, if it's something that you've already uploaded to a eThuto page, or you can see here some of the additional ones. So from YouTube or Flickr or Dropbox or wherever. So I'm going to insert something just from my screen here. From my computer here. Just put in a nice little GIF image. And then this is going to be the message that we're going to display all year round. And you can date restrict it. As with everything in eThuto, you can date restrict it, meaning that you can have it display after a certain time. So maybe we say this only displays tomorrow at 8, and it only displays until, which means it will automatically close on this date and time slot. Okay, I'm not going to date restrict this one. You can email the announcements. So the emails that students have set up on their eThuto profile, they will receive a copy of this announcement onto that email as well. So this is a nice way to make sure that you are. So I'm not going to send this out because I have some of my colleagues on this page as students to help me test things out with, and I don't want them to get a weird email that's going to confuse them. So I'm not going to do that now. A nice thing that you can do is you can link something in your course. So for instance, any of these units to this announcement. So if, for instance, this announcement pertains to, browse, let's see, Learning Unit 1, Lesson 1. Okay, I'm just going to click on that. And now it will give a link directly to that unit for a student for easy access. So that's also kind of nice to have. Okay, I'm done with my announcement. I'm going to submit. And there you can see that my new announcement appeared below this line. But now I can, for instance, drag that down. Come on. Sorry. There we go. Okay. Now if I create a new announcement, so I'm just real quickly going to create a new announcement. This might just be something I'm making them aware of. I'm going to submit again. And now you'll see that it won't replace this permanent announcement at the top. It will appear below the line. Okay, so that's how that works. All right, that's it for announcements. Pretty simple, straightforward. Let's move on to our next tool. Collaborate Ultra. Now, I'm not going to go into Collaborate Ultra too much because there's quite a lot you can do, and you can draw reports and recordings. I'm just going to show you quickly how to set one up. But this is basically the Zoom in eThuto, or the Teams video conferencing. So it's just a video conferencing plugin that you can use to have virtual classes with your students or engagement of any sort. But it's exactly the way you would expect it to work. If you are familiar with Zoom and Teams and other video conferencing software, it's very, very similar to that. So we come into the sessions tab. Now you'll see here where we have that little menu icon. We can toggle between sessions and recordings. So whenever we record a session, the recordings will be stored here. And we're going to go to sessions now first, because we're going to create a new session. Now I'm going to just quickly, something very important that I want you to note. At the top here is the course room. Now this is something that is a little bit different in Collaborate that you won't find in Teams or Zoom. The course room is an always available space that you can quickly access if you just need to have a room where you want to quickly talk to someone or quickly make a recording or anything like that. A lot of times students confuse this room with where they're supposed to be. So you can tell them 20 times over, please go to class session test, and they will still end up in the course room and tell you, so ma'am, I don't know where I am. Okay, so if you are afraid of the course room being used, so let me just show you quickly. I can just go into the course room. I'm going to join the room. And this is going to be a video room where we can do anything. And it's just a quick room, basically, where you can don't have to set up settings or times or things like that, where you can just quickly invite someone in and tell them, go to the course room, and I'll find you there. So there you go. Let's see. Hello. Here I am. So same thing. Okay, so that is the course room. If you are afraid that your students are going to go into it by accident, you can just lock it. That means the students won't see it. So remember that. A lot of times people phone me up and say, half my students are in the class and half of them say they're on the class, but they're not in the class. And it's always the course room. They come into this one mistakenly because it is unlocked and available, and they don't read where they are going into. You know how students are with reading. So lock this if you're afraid that students are going to accidentally go into that instead of the classes that you prepared for them. And then you can quickly unlock it if you just want to use a blank room for something quickly. All right, so let's create a new session. I'm going to create a session here. And then I've got 3 tabs at the top. The first one is events details, and that pertains to all of my details, the dates and things like that. Settings, so these will be what do I share, what do I make, things like that. We'll go through them quickly. And then the last one is attendance. How will attendance be measured? So first we're going to go up to event details. I'm just going to call this 23 September. You have to give it a name. And under the event details, I have guest access. Now, guest access is if you wanted to generate a link that is only available, not only available, that is also available to someone outside of your eThuto page. So remember, only people who are enrolled to this page will have access to your session unless you grant access. So I'm going to say guest. It's going to create a link now when I save. What is my guest role? So if this is maybe a guest lecturer, you might want to make them a presenter and not just a participant so that they can share their screen. Otherwise, if it's just students from outside of the group, you can just leave it as participant, and they will have the same abilities as all the other participants. Now, it doesn't create a link yet. It only creates the link once it's saved. I'm not entirely sure why it does this. I think it generates individual links and it just doesn't create them unless it's submitted. All right, so when does my session start? When does my session end? That's pretty straightforward. Students won't be able to access it though, unless you have, any time other than the times you set up. So remember that. You can have no end. So if it's an open session that doesn't have an end, you can have that. And you repeat the session either weekly, daily, monthly. So if this is a classroom that you have every week, you can repeat it. Or if it's check-in sessions you have every day or monthly, you can repeat it and you don't have to set up again. When do you want your students to be allowed to come in? By default, it will be 15 minutes. If it's maybe something very strict, you can say no, or you can have longer minutes beforehand. Now, remember, this counts for you as well. So if you want to get into this room earlier than 50 minutes, remember to set it up that way so that you are also allowed into the room before. And then finally, you can just provide a little description. Why are we meeting? Just type something in there. Okay, next up, we're going to go to our settings. Now, there are 3 roles in Collaborate. The one is participant, the next is presenter, and the other one is moderator. You, as the instructor of the page and creator of the session, will automatically be the moderator. That means you'll have access to the settings, the chats, and all of the behind-the-scenes things. Students who come in as participants will only have the permissions you allow them, and you can see them here. The presenter will always be allowed to share audio, video, and share their screen. So remember that your students won't be able to share their screen unless they are made presenters. So if this is a session where students are going to be presenting for, an assignment, you want to change it from participant to presenter to allow them to share their screen. If it's just a lesson and only you will be presenting, then you can leave it as participant, and then you can choose what they are allowed to do. I, for instance, toggle off the draw on whiteboard and files because they love it, but it's very distracting. So I don't allow them to do that. You can maybe leave them so that they can chat or in the chat messages and share their audio and video. If you uncheck these, they will not be able to see a little mic icon and switch on their mic or video feed. So remember that if you want them to be able to do that, you will have to check these little boxes. So recording. Allow recording downloads. Now, this is important to check if you're recording classes and you want your students to have access to them. This means that they can go to a place where they have internet and download the recording for later viewing. If you do not check this box, they will only be able to stream the recording, which means they will have to be at a place where they have all of that data, but also quiet space where they can watch your recording. So remember that for any sessions that you want the students to be able to have the video for later reference. You can anonymize the chat messages. I would not recommend it, but you can. So whenever they chat in box, their names are not attached to the message. Moderator permissions only show profile pictures for moderators. So this is for privacy. If you ever have a session where you don't want students to see each other's profile pictures, you can check this box so that only you see those. So we've been through participant permissions, what you want them to be able to do. Enable session telephonically. So if you want students to be able to call in with a landline or a cell phone and listen to the session, the problem is it's only going to be audio. So it is more often than not necessary to do that. I don't even tell students that it's available because then maybe they'll want it, or so they don't have data or something. So it's just something extra. Private chat. Do you want them to be able to chat privately to each other? So this is completely dependent on you. If you don't have this box checked, then they can only chat on the main chat box. They can't chat to each other behind the scenes. If you do check that, you can check it so that you as the moderator can see all the chats and supervise them. Profanity filter. So it's just if it picks up a swear word, it's just going to hide it. It makes little stars. So if you want to do that. Okay. You can leave the multimedia. We don't have the Chime plugin, so you can just leave that. And then the next one up is attendance. How is attendance recorded? So if you want the attendance to be recorded for the session, just check the box. And then how is it recorded? So if late attendings, for instance, how late before you want them to be marked as absent? Now, you know, 5 minutes is not a lot. So I wouldn't mark them absent, maybe say 15 minutes. And then after that, they will be marked absent. Now, remember that 15 minutes is decided by the time here. So you want to make sure that your time is correct here, that, you know, 15 minutes is 15 minutes. And then, so it's going to be marked as late. When are they going to be marked as absent? You know, 20 minutes or so on. How much time should they be in the session? So how much time should they stay in the session? Now, by default, it will be on 50%. So we have an hour session, which means a student has to have a minimum of 30 minutes in the session. If they don't make that, then they will be put down as absent. You can have it as more, you can have it as less. Okay, so this all depends completely on you. All right, so once you're done, we're going to create the session. You'll see now that after the session has been created, I have now that guest link that I can share, like I share a Zoom link or a Teams link or whatever with people outside of my page. You just copy it here. So if we copy it and open it in a new browser, it'll take us to that session. Oh, sorry, I didn't copy it. I copied the... I think I missed it when I copied it. Let's try again. There we go. And now the person will come in as a guest. They will be asked to put their name in, join the session, and they will join in the session as any of your other students. Your other students to join, they will just come to the Collaborate tab, go to the session, and click on it to join the session. Okay, once your session is done and you want to see who attended and view all of your reports, you just come to that little menu, say view reports. Now, because we didn't have a session and there was no one in there, there's nothing here. But if we go to another session that I have created before, you can see here that I've got reports for all of the attendees that came in. So if we view the report, you can see who's been in. And there is a CSV file that we can download that shows you exactly how long your students have been in. Now, the reason this one has so many, as you can see, these are different times I've accessed this one is because I use this one as my test one, and it's always available. I leave it it's got no end, and that's why it has so many lines. Now, you will only have a single line if you only had a single class, and then you can see your reports like this. So don't worry about that. All right, that is it for Collaborate now. Let's move on to some of the others. ConnectYard. Now, ConnectYard is a little bit different. Here in the course management section, you open it up and it doesn't actually show you the tool, but just some of the settings. So if you want to use ConnectYard, that is our integration with WhatsApp, which means that all of your notifications are sent out through WhatsApp to the student's phone. First thing you want to do is make sure that you come and check which of the three you want to use ConnectYard for. Now, by default, these will be switched off. So if you want to use ConnectYard, you have to come into the course tools, ConnectYard, and come and check the boxes for announcements, discussions, and grades, or whichever you want to use ConnectYard with. Then you submit. Now, ConnectYard, you have to go to the link. So remember, again, tool link, create it, and put it on your menu somewhere. I've got mine here at the top. And how ConnectYard would, again, we have a full video on ConnectYard. So again, I'm not going to go too much into depth. Your students also have a video that shows them how to attach their cell phone numbers so that they receive the messages from WhatsApp. And what ConnectYard is basically just a place where all of the communications are disseminated. So announcements come here. There are the two that I just posted a couple of seconds ago. I can already see that 5 people have viewed that announcement. Now, remember, I told you I put my colleagues on this page just to serve as dummy students so I can test things, but they were kind enough to actually view the messages so I can see that they viewed these messages. And this is great. I can see that 100% of people on my page has viewed this. I can see who's not viewed it. So one of Dr. Bardenos's accounts has not viewed it. So that's ConnectYard. It's quite nice. Now, these are called yards. So they call it yards, whatever. You know, that's the name they call this space where all of the messages come. And you can here see everything that's ever been sent on this page via announcements, or I just want to find a discussion. You can see at the bottom where this message comes from. You can see this one has 19,444 views. Just want to find one that has discussion. Let's go and see one of the other yards if I have something here. There we go. There we can see what a discussion one will look like. So there is a discussion topic that I've put up, and you can see the amount of replies, the amount of views, and everything like that. Okay, now students know how to do this if they came to orientation in the beginning here, but again, we also have a video for them on ConnectYard that shows them everything, but they can just reply in here and it will automatically link to their WhatsApp on their phone. Okay, so that is ConnectYard. You don't have to worry too much about ConnectYard. Once you've activated it here, all of your normal announcements and discussions, your normal engagement will just go to the students' WhatsApp. And that's really what you want. You continue working in announcements and you continue working in discussions. It also tells them when a grade has been upgraded to their WhatsApp if you check that box. But you don't really have to worry too much about the dashboard. Okay, unless you want to put announcements here, but it's just a bit superfluous. I just use the announcements and discussions and not worry too much about this dashboard here. You know, there's no need for you to worry. You just want to make sure that it is linked so that students receive it on their cell phones. Okay, the next one over we have is discussions. Let me just find it. Now, obviously, there are lots more here that we can't cover in an hour. So please feel free to go and explore with them. Some of these are great. For instance, I use contacts when I want students to be able to see each other's information or the lecturer's information. Calendar is nice if you don't use your Outlook calendar, but most of us use our Outlook calendar. Course messages, we don't really use because most people have WhatsApp groups or things like that now, but it's basically just the up and down, back and forth course messages where you can send messages to anyone in your course and they can send messages back. So let's have a look at discussion boards. Now, how this works is the discussion board is kind of like, think of it as the umbrella. And underneath it, you have forums, and underneath that, you have threads. Okay, so I'm going to go to this page, discussion board. I already have 2 forums. Okay, so for instance, one can be your chapter 1 forum, or maybe it's your semester 1 forum or whatever. And then within that forum, you have different threads. And in a thread is where we talk. Okay. So this is where we type. In a thread, you'll see that the grayed out message, the one at the very top, is called the original poster message. That will be you or the student who has created the thread. Everything underneath that is replies to the thread or replies to replies. So you can see it has an indentation. So if it's level with the original post, that means that this is reply to that original post. But when it's indented like this, it means that this reply is to this post. Okay, so it works kind of in that tiered fashion. Now, anyone who's used any social media communication will find this very familiar. It works exactly the same way. In the same way in Facebook, that you can comment to someone's original post, but someone can comment to your comment and to that comment and to that comment, and so down the tier they go. Okay, so that works exactly the same way. So a student will come and reply to this one, or reply to that one, or reply to whichever, and then talk in that way. Sorry, so let's create a new forum so that I can show you some of the settings. I'm going to call this, let's call it 23 SIP. And we have a description for our forum. So I'm just going to call it that. Now, again, we can make it available at certain times. So if this is a forum for second semester, I'm going to make it available from, for instance, today only, because they shouldn't have had access to it before now. for instance, like that. We can close it up again as well if you want. Okay, now let's have a look at some of these settings. Leave it on standard view. If you have it so that participants must create a thread first, we find a lot of problems because students don't understand what's going on. If you tick that, it means that a student must create a thread before they can view any other threads in that forum. So unless you have a very specific plan in mind, I'll just leave it on the standard view if I were you. Marks, so you can give marks to forums. So if you want, for instance, that this should be marked, then you should you want it to be out of 10 marks, or you can mark the threads instead of the forums. And that means just that it's creating a column in your grade center for the discussion forum or the specific thread. And then it means that you can go and mark what the students put into the threads in the forums and give them points for that. When do we want them to come into the needs marking status? Well, you can check that off if you don't. But let's say after every post, the student will end up in the needs marking so that you can mark them. And you can have a due date. So since this is something that is going to show up in the needs marking, you can have a due date as well as a rubric. So you can either create a new rubric or select one that you've already created. Subscriptions, so that is just subscriptions. Students can subscribe to threads or forums so that they get notifications whenever something updates there. Do you want that not to happen? You can check it. There's no reason really not to. It's nice to be able to subscribe to a forum because then whenever something new happens in that forum, you get notified. You can also allow them to subscribe to specific threads or the forum itself. Okay, now what is shown in the email when they are notified, you can just say include the link or include the whole message in the email. So really just, these are just semantics. They are completely dependent on your tastes and your subject and what the discussion is about. We are not allowing anonymous posts because we checked it off somewhere before. Oh, because we have marking on, we can't have anonymous posts. If you didn't have marking on, that would be available, meaning that students can post anonymously. You can allow them to delete their own post or you cannot allow it. Allow them to edit their own posts or not allow it. Allow them to create new threads or not allow it. I would leave this checked off if you're having a discussion where you want everyone in the same space. Otherwise, they create new threads and, there's too many threads going on and not all the students are participating in the same threads and you kind of lose that interactive engagement. So I'd leave this checked off and just create the thread yourself and have students reply to that thread. Okay, you can allow them to attach files or you not allow it. Let them reply with a quote. I kind of like checking these three on because it just makes it more interactive. So in other words, tagging the post or rating the post, it's fun and students enjoy doing it, also replying with a quote, and it really does make it a bit more engaging. Forced moderation means that you as the moderator or the instructor first has to check a post before it's allowed to go into the public space. So that depends on if you're afraid that they might be abusing the thread, then you can check that on, but it will be a lot of work for you if you have to check each and every discussion thread, especially for those of you with large classes. So be careful when you check that you are sure that that is what you want. Now that we've created our forum, we're going to submit. And there is my new forum. And I can see that I've got no posts in it yet. No, so obviously there won't be any replies or participants or anything like that. Now I'm going to create a thread within my forum. So this is the second semester forum. So there might be 3 or 4 threads in here of different topics. I'm going to create one now by clicking on it. Now, remember in our settings, we said students are not allowed to create threads. That means they don't have this button. They can't create new threads. So that means that until I, as the instructor, create a thread, students cannot participate in this discussion, this 23 September one, because I didn't allow them to create threads. And I also haven't created a thread yet myself. So I'm going to create a thread. And that is just the topic. So you can see not a lot of settings, not a lot of stuff. This is just what we say. Okay, so the topic comes at the top. And we tell them here the instructions, what they need to do. Maybe we tell them Maybe they talk about their own experience. Must reply to at least 2 other members' posts, or whatever your rules are for discussion. Some of you have very in-depth rules of rules that you have, like netiquette and all of those things. You can add these here as well. But as long as you have the prompt for the students, what they need to talk about in this little box. You can also add some files if you want some files to be attached to the discussion threads that they can download if there's something that you want them to read. You can also add any links. So if I, for instance, want to add a video, I can just copy that video URL and I can put that in here as well. Sorry. So if you want them to be able to watch, why is that not embedding? There we go. Watch a video first, or maybe link to an article or anything, you can add that into the instructions. There we go. Now we have a thread. The students will come and click on the thread and they will reply. And so we will build a discussion. Okay, so that is discussion forums. Glossary is kind of nice. I like this for those of you in the medical fields and engineering fields. You have a lot of terms. Excuse me. I've got a frog in my throat now. You have a lot of terms and concepts that are unique to your fields, and you might want to create them in the glossary for students to find. So you just simply create a term and say, for instance, the definition is a burger. And then you put in the definition as it is according to your subject or your book or whatever the case may be. We're going to say okay, and then we submit, and so we can add different terms to our glossary. Okay, and this is for students to come and check out to see if they, if you have specific terms that you won't find easily, or sometimes there are terms that if students go and find them on the internet, they are Americanized or, not according to our, South African context. So it's nice to put them in here for students to go and peruse. All right, the next thing I'm going to show you is journals. Now you'll notice that I skipped blogs, and the reason I skipped blogs is that journals are exactly the same as blogs. The only difference is that in a blog, students can see each other's blogs and comment on them, whereas journals are private between the instructor and the student. So those are the only differences between journals and blogs. They create exactly the same way. You'll see the settings are also exactly the same way. So that's why I skipped blogs. So journals, very much the same as discussions. We can see all of our different journals here. I'm going to create a new one for this exercise. Let's call it 23 September as well. And again, we have our instructions box, and this is where we prompt the students to journal. Now you'll see a couple of differences in the settings for journals, and one of them is how often should these students enter a journal index? And it can go between weekly or monthly. Now, say, for instance, your students are on their work integrated learning projects. They are away from campus and they need to enter weekly journal entries, because maybe they have to let you know how it's going, or maybe they have to upload a log file of their activities of the week, or maybe just a reflection on how they are doing and what they are learning. Or they can do it monthly if it's maybe something that they spent a whole year on and you want 12 monthly ones. That's dependent on you. Same as with discussions, you can allow them to delete. Now, if this is a journal entry, I definitely recommend having them, giving them the ability to delete and edit their own entries, because this is their own space. You can allow them to delete your comments or not. I wouldn't do that, because your comments are, critique and constructive, hopefully. And you can allow them to view. So we want them to be able to view. Again, you can mark the journal. So if you want to be able to give it marks, or if it's just a reflection space, you can leave it on no marking. And the same as with the discussion forum, if we do have marks, we need to put in a points possible. Let's say it's out of 100, and show how often should we see this in the needs marking status. So after every one entry, it will show up in the needs marking, so you can see it there, or after every 10 entries, depending on what you are doing with the journal. Okay, so I'm going to just leave it on no marking and submit. So how this will work, again, we have a video on this for students on the page. Let me just go back. So if they go to playlist students, there is a journals student video for them that shows them how to make journal entries. So don't worry too much about them. If they have attended orientation, they know about the site. Otherwise, you can direct them to the YouTube channel for any videos that they might need. So the student is going to come in. This is their journal and there are no entries. So we're going to say create a journal entry, call this maybe a reflection. So reflect. So this is where you put in your instructions. Okay. So you as the lecturer, you start it off, post entry, and now the students can, I said it the wrong way around. So the student comes in and creates the journal entry and you as the lecturer can, okay. Weekly entry. Number 2, you might want to specify to them how they label these so it's easier for you to mark. And so on. So the student will keep posting their entries and they will keep popping up and you can see them here as well. Okay, and you as the instructor will be able to comment on them. Okay, so that is a journal entry. And that is what that would look like. You as the instructor can view the different, so let's see, there's all of the students on this course, and you can see that all the other students don't have any entries yet. But this is where you could go to any other student and see their journal entries. Okay, so that is journals. Let's move on. We're nearly there. And then I'm going to open up for questions. Okay, so quickly, I'm going to cover Safe Assign and then just quickly go through test servers and pools. Wikis is a space that you can have. It's kind of like a Google Doc, and the settings work exactly the same as journals and blogs, but this is a space where students all work on the same document. So imagine a journal space, but all the students work on the same journal space or blog space. So that's what wikis are. All right, let's quickly go to Safe Assign. Now, Safe Assign is the plagiarism detection tool within Blackboard, and we use this for undergraduate students. Now, you can attach it to assignment, and what I mean by that is in an assignment, under the settings of the assignment, you can have this document go through Safe Assign, so plagiarism tools here, and it's under the submission details tab. So if you open that up, you'll find it here. You can say, yes, I want these assignments to be checked for plagiarism. I want to allow the students to view it, and I want to exclude it from the database. Just an important note on this, what this means. This means that if the student uploads a document and this box is checked, that document will not be added to the institutional, which is CUT, and global, which is Safe Assign's global databases, which means that if the student is going to upload this document again, either after some edits or maybe as a portfolio of evidence at the end of the year, it will not compare to itself. So a lot of times people forget to check this box. A student uploads a document in term 1, they have to re-upload that document in maybe term 4 for their portfolio of evidence, but now they get 100% because the document is already on the institutional database. So be sure that you check this box. Okay, so that's what that looks like under an assignment, but you can also use Safe Assign away from assignments by going to the course tool, Safe Assign. Firstly, here you can view all of your assignment Safe Assign items. So here are 2 assignments where I had enabled Safe Assign to check the assignment, and I can go and have a look at all of the students that. Now, the problem here is I don't have any students who uploaded this one, so I have nothing in the list. Let's see if the other one has something. There we go. So under my other assignment, I think it's exactly the one we were just in, I will see a list of all the students who've submitted and their Safe Assign reports. Okay. The next thing we have here is direct submit. So this is if you want to submit a document that's on your computer, but you don't want to submit it via an assignment. So we can just go to direct submit. And here you can see all of the ones that I've submitted over the years on this page. We're going to say submit paper here in the blue button. Have a couple of options here, submit as draft. Now, this is the same as that exclude database checkbox that we have in assignments. This means that if I'm going to re-upload this at a later time, it will not compare to itself. Skip plagiarism checking, that's only if you want to just add the document to the database. So it's almost the opposite. So in other words, it's not going to check for plagiarism. You just want this document to be added to the database so that the next, document is compared to that as well, if that makes sense. And now I can just upload your file. And it's going to upload the file. Now, remember, there are all the file types that are accepted. Okay, but we find that docx, so in other words, the newer Word documents and PDF documents work best. You can also copy and paste the document in here, but I really wouldn't recommend it because HTML formatting is different from the Microsoft Word formatting, and often it just creates havoc. So I would rather just upload the file than try and paste it in if that's possible. It's just much easier. And then we submit, and it's now going to compare it. Now, when you come up to it, I'm just going to try and find it. It'll be on the last page now because it's the last one uploaded. There we go. It's going to have these two little blue lines, which just means it's still busy. Okay, it's still busy generating the report. Remember, it has to put this document through a database of millions of words. So it's going to take a while, depending on the size of your document as well. We find that D documents or, PhD documents or DTech documents, very long documents can sometimes take up to 4 hours to come back. So it's just going to still be in progress. When it's done, though, you can download the report here, or you can view it live here. And here you can see what is being matched. So here we have one that's matched to another student's paper, and it will be highlighted in that kind of peachy color. So I can scroll down the report until I find that color. And I can see, oh, that is just one single little line, and it's in the bibliography anyway. So I'm going to ignore that. This is a very good study, and I'm happy with that, depending on what the criteria was. Okay, so that is the direct submit for Safe Assign. You can suggest URLs if you want to. If you find a document that matched to one of your students' documents, but that Safe Assign did not pick up on, you can suggest it to Safe Assign, and that way the program gets better and better and better because user input basically makes it learn and makes it better and better. But it's not really something we do often. All right, so the last thing I'm quickly going to go through is test servers and pools. So a lot of people are not aware that they can manage their tests here in one space. So often we create tests in the menu under a content area, and we never really manage our tests apart from that. So a lot of people are not aware that you can manage your tests here under course tools. This is always also where we create pools if you want to create tests that sample from different question sets. If you want to know more about that, I have a very nice video on that under tests. So all of the testings you need is under this one, even creating test sets, which is quite nice. But just so I quickly show you, all your tests will be here. And you can see whether or not they are deployed. Deployment means whether the test is available in the menu. So all of your old tests that came over when your subject was copied will still be here and available for deployment. They are just not deployed because you've moved on with the subject. And then here you can see all the tests that are deployed and where they are deployed. So if I go to Learning Unit 1, I should see a test called color mixing. So let's go. Learning Unit 1. There's my color mixing test. Okay, so you can see all of your old tests and whether or not they are deployed here. You can even edit your tests from here. And this is where you will also export them to import them to other subjects. Again, I have a nice video on that. There we go, export then import test, that shows you exactly how to do that. This is where you would come and do that. But this is a nice space where you can manage some of your tests, delete some of the ones, that are irrelevant or that's come from 2010, because you will be surprised how many times I actually see that in subjects where there are still data from very, very long ago. And you can come and clean up if you like and so on. You can also create a test from here and then later go and deploy it in the in the content area. So say, for instance, I created a test. I can come to assignments test. And all of the tests that are in my bank but has not been deployed will be in this little menu here. And I can just come and submit it from here. But I prefer creating it within the content area. Just to me, it feels, more logical, but it all depends on you. All right, guys, that is it for today and some of these course tools, but you are very welcome to contact me if there are any of these that I did not cover today that you're interested in. But like I said, a lot of them work on the same premise, which means that, like, for instance, blogs and journals and discussions and some of these other communication tools have the same settings. So if you understand how to set up one, you understand how to set up all of them. But you are really welcome to contact me if there's anything here that you are more interested in. So I'm going to open up for questions now. We have about 5 minutes left. You can also email me questions if you think about them later. Sometimes, especially when it's a long session, you don't really think of something until a little bit later. So please feel free to email me. You can also put them in the chat box if you don't want to unmute yourself. But there we go. Open up the floor for questions. Thank you. Also, remember, I am recording this session. I will upload it to YouTube later. I do realize that I talk quickly in these sessions. There's just always so much information to get into 1 hour. So I have to rush through some things. And I do know that that is sometimes harder. All right, Vuyo, please go ahead with your question.
Hi, thank you. I would just like to ask, with the discussion forums, maybe I missed it. I had to go out for a bit. Can I download the threads?
Unfortunately,
let's say now, not. So which means if I want to review, I have to be online.
You have to be online, but there's a cheap way around it. Now, this is the same thing for tests, and for some reason, it's not for some reason. Blackboard is very specific about the reason. It's regarding privacy issues. They don't allow you to also download tests this way. But what we do is we just print them out, and it's not as nice, but it works well. So if this is my thread, for instance, I'm going to want to just print this out. Now, there's a trick to it. If you print out your page now, it's only going to show you half of the thread, only one sheet of paper. And the reason why is because we are still in the overlay. Now, this is important. Always check this if you are printing anything out or if you are sharing a link to a student. Now, what happens here, it's got a compounded link at the top, and this link is always the same. And if you send this link to someone, it's going to open up on the home page of that page every time. It won't open up on the thread. So what we need to do is you go back and say, for instance, it's this thread, open that in a new tab so that we get rid of the overlay and the compounded URL, which is here. And you can see now, you can see the URL has changed to the full URL that we can share with our students, but also now without the overlay, we can print the entire thing. And I mean, not necessarily print it into the printer. I mean, you can also print it to an Adobe PDF document if you want to have it in such a way. And this works great for your archives or your audits or anything where you need to save evidence. You can do this quickly for any of your threads and have it like this, or in your case, if you want to work offline. I hope that answers your question.
No, definitely, that will help.
Thank you. Okay, next question. Will again, please go ahead.
Oh, I thought I was taking down my hand. Sorry.
Oh, no, it's fine. There we go. I've taken it down for you. Okay, I think everyone is done with questions for now. I'm going to stop the recording so that I can start generating that video.